Hi everyone! We're down on the ground, we're on the grass because I need both hands free to tell you that today we are painting out of A Year of Watercolour, which is great because I don't know about you, but I buy all sorts of books with the best of intentions and then maybe I don't open them up as much as I should. Whoops! Working outdoors, it's quite good. Okay, so in A Year of Watercolour, it tracks the seasons, which means that the projects are inspired by what's actually going on outside. And in one page we have the elderflower, and the elderflower is growing, and I thought it was a really good one to actually try in a video form because those white little flowers are kind of tricky, and I did have a comment from a patron asking if we could go through it, so this seemed like a perfect opportunity. If you don't have a copy of this, you can get signed copies from my Etsy shop and website, wintonpaperco.com. It's full of really beautiful nature-inspired tutorials and a fun few little anecdotes and recipes about me and Crumble and our various wanders into nature. But for now, to paint the elderflower, grab your paints and let's get started. What I love so much about A Year of Watercolour is that it tracks the seasons, and if you're lucky enough to be near some green spaces or have a garden of your own, there's a very likely chance that you're going to see for real what is in the book. So we've got this lovely elderflower plant, and it's a really great one to try if you are interested in sort of how to get those lovely light, delicate, pale colours, because this is one of those white, in inverted commas, colours. So I just so happen to have a gorgeous smelling bit of elderflower around the gate near our house, so I snipped it so we could have a closer look at it. And also we can see when you put it on against the white page, you really can see that there are, oh, little bug, there are colours in there, little yellowy tones, green tones, creamy, papery tones that help us define a white colour that's actually got quite a lot of hue and colour in it, so it means it shows up on a white page. So if you are following along with your A Year of Watercolour book, we're on page 50, we're in late spring. We're sort of, I mean, this is pushing it, late spring, really. We are heading into summer. Well, we're in summer, aren't we? But this is just still a fantastic one to paint. So let's crack on, shall we? So I've got a piece of watercolour paper and a lot of insects now running across my page. I have got a piece of watercolour paper that is about 6 by 8 inches. Just line it up there. And what we're going to do to begin with is I want to draw in particularly the way in which these stems branch out. So we're just going to do a fairly simple one today. So I'm going to have a sort of branch for leaves. And then at this point I'm going to fan out my elderflower stem, and then from there we get these little upturned umbrellas with quite a few little branches on them. And what we're building up towards is creating like a canopy over the top. And in the book I talk about little sort of clouds that we're creating. So I'm just adding a few more branches, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to just pick off a little one. So we've got our first set of upturned branches, and then we're going up to here, and then there might just be a few more coming off at each time. But essentially you don't need to get yourself too stuck in terms of all the branches, because so much of it is covered by the flowers we paint. But what is a really good idea is now we're going to sort of create a sort of halo oval shape that is going to cover the area of where our flowers are going to be. And I just want. I can't really help myself here. No, I will stop at 3. I'll stop at 3. I just get really excited when I get the chance to paint. And then down on the branches, we've got these lovely leaves. So I've done a main stem, and I'm going to do a few extra branches. They come out at parallel points. Okay, lovely. Now the pencil's nice and strong there. So this would be a great point if you want to use our line drawings as traceables, to just take a quick screen grab here, and then you could pause the video, take a screen grab, and then we're going to just knock it back with the kneadable eraser, because especially when we're painting with white flowers, white paint, we want to make our pencil nice and faint, just so it's not showing up and dominating things too much. So this is a really great way of just reducing your pencil lines but keeping them in place, is just rolling with the kneadable eraser. We're going to create this petal mix, and so in the book I use a mixture of yellow ochre, green gold and Payne's grey. Very, very simple. I mean, I wrote this book a few years ago now, and of course, you know, you come across new colours and all that kind of thing, but really I'm still using these colour combinations, sometimes mixing in, replacing buff titanium in for yellow ochre. But on the whole, this is still the colour I use. So with those colours, the key thing is adding in lots of water, diluting it right down in the palette. And then you can see I feel like I maybe just want to add a tiny bit more Payne's grey. Payne's grey is such a dominant colour though, so you have to be really careful. And maybe I want to make it a little bit more golden, so a little bit more yellow ochre. That's looking nice, and then just plenty of water. And what you can always do, if you feel like you've got swimming pools of water in your palette, just take a little bit to a separate area, and all of a sudden we've got a lovely dilute colour. And now with the size 0 brush, I'm going to start painting in little 5-petaled flowers around the edge of my oval shapes to establish where my elderflowers sit on the plant. And so I'm just taking little droplets of colour. It's very pale, but you can see from the reference it is also very pale, and that's why it's so good to have a copy of the book, because you can see it really crisply and clearly, but of course make sure that you're watching our YouTube tutorials on as large a screen as you can find, and is zooming in beautifully for us. But sometimes, especially when you're starting off watercolour paintings, they are pale, and so they are a little bit trickier to see, but as they dry, they crisp up, and then they will start to look fantastic, like lovely little elderflower flowers. There we go. And the smell in the studio is absolutely glorious. The cool thing in A Year of Watercolour is not only do we have the watercolour tutorials, but we also have little sort of diary entries, anecdotes and recipes. And one thing I am very much going to be doing after this is making elderflower cordial. So we are going to just continue on painting around the edges of these ovals, and I'm overlapping over the pencil line. I want it to be a little sort of uneven. I don't want it to be perfect in terms of a perfect oval outline. I mean, we can always add a few more extra flowers sort of to the edges to make things look a little less uniform, but that's what we're going to do across all 3 of the ovals. Now I've got my ovals filled in, what I'm going to do is go back to the first one, which has started to dry, and I'm going to just fill in more and more flowers, and it feels like, oh my goodness, this is going to take ages. Remember, watercolour is about enjoying the process and slowing down and taking some time for yourself. So see this as a lovely opportunity to take some time for yourself, and also add in some wayward ones here and there, because look, this may be a cluster and a cloud, but it's got some outliers, hasn't it? So we're just going to fill up, and because that first layer is dried, we can overlap a little bit, get a lovely sense of a full cloud of elderflowers. So we've got all our little flowers in, and I've put in a few extra ones, but actually I could put in even more wayward little ones, and we can totally do that at a later point. But now we're going to focus on the stem. So in the book with the stem mix, I go for lemon yellow, sap green and green gold and mix them all together, which makes a lovely, fresh and vibrant mixture. And I'm going to begin at the base with my size 4 brush, with the sort of main bulk of the stem being quite broad, and then it's going to thin. Well, the main stem stays quite thick, and then it's when it suddenly forks off into the branches up here. So I do enjoy sort of following my own instructions. It's just quite funny. Sometimes you're like, oh really, should I do that? Okay. And then other times you're like, yeah, I would totally instinctively do that. And this is one of those moments. So a size 0 brush to just get thinner lines, but also using a tiny bit of unpainted space on those parallel lines there to be able to get right in and get some lovely little detail. And then the first of the branches coming up underneath. And then starting to sort of paint in the beginnings of forked branches, and you could also put in sort of branches in behind that you might not just see. And then we can start to sort of connect things up in behind the flowers. And this is important that your flowers have dried at this point, so that you can do nice little bits of green in between. And I do recommend, and I was just thinking it, I go down to a 4/10 brush, which I have here. All these brushes that I'm using are available in my shop, by the way, and they are my absolute favourite brushes. They are a synthetic bristled brush made by Pro Art Brushes in the UK, little family run, well no, not little, a very established family run business in Yorkshire. And yeah, I'm hoping to go up and visit the factory soon, which would be really cool, see how these brushes get made. But I'm just going to sort of gradually go around and put in a few branches here and there, just to get the sense of that sort of network that's going on underneath the flower. So for the leaves now, I just also painted in the branches for the leaves. We're going to add a bit more sap green to the mixture. And then it says in the book, if you're make sure that your pointed round size 8 brush makes a nice fine point. And that is because we're going to use this really nice large brush to create these shapes. We do need to make sure it's got a nice point. Now there will come a point, no pun intended, where your brushes start, if they've used them lots, they will start to struggle to get to a really fine tip. There are ways you can help. You can sort of twist the bristles in the palette like that, which just sort of twists them up into a nice point, or you can sort of reshape them with a little bit of soap sort of after cleaning them. But for now, we're all good. So I am going to build up the leaves by painting in sort of little serrated edge leaves with these sort of tapered line C-curve strokes. Which gives you this lovely serrated edge leaf. So we just sort of coat the previous stroke with an extra leaf line, and every time the point of the brush just sort of sits out on the side like that, which gives it the appearance of a serrated edge leaf. And that's why it's so important to have at least part of a point on your brush to allow it to give a nice serrated edge like that. And the great thing is, in the book we have basic sort of leaf shape tutorials and brushstroke tutorials in the early pages. So things like painting these leaves, we don't just throw you straight in the deep end. And then it says a little bit of alizarin crimson just on the branches, just a little bit of a stroke here and there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to start building up detail. So this might seem a bit crazy, but on every single little flower there are these tiny little filaments, little lines coming out of the centre of the flower, and little yellow anthers, which are the yellow dots on the edge. So what we're going to do, we're going to add the tiniest bit of extra Payne's grey into this mix to make it ever so slightly deeper. And also we need yellow. Now in the book I'm at a cadmium yellow phase. I've moved on to a Hansa yellow medium phase, but it's all essentially doing the same job. So again, this is one of those ones for a nice relaxing time of not rushing, not hurrying through your painting. We're going to paint little filaments and anthers, and also then you could always just create a little bit of a centre of the flower. Now a lot of these petals might be sort of overlapping on each other, so it's down to you to choose which flowers you're going to see these little lines. But trust me, it is worth it. And then when you've done a few, drop in some little yellow anthers. You'll be glad to know in the book I say, don't worry about painting every single one, and what I do is I paint all of the sort of ones around the edge, and then as many as I can see in the middle, but also you just after a while get this sense of the sort of cloud of flowers all sort of acting together. So the last thing I'm doing here is just a little bit extra of some slightly more Payne's grey into that petal mix, just getting some of the centres of the flowers. And that's looking pretty darn perfect. So very happy with that. So now we could rub out the pencil with a hard eraser, because you can still see little bits of pencil. So we'll let that dry 100%, rub out the pencil, and then there'll just be a tiny little bit more detail, and then we're done. So the finishing touches are all about details. So we've got sap green here, and I'm going to use it almost a bit like a shadow mix to bring out a little bit more detail on the stems. So I talk about the sort of faint ridges on the stems. So using my size 0 brush to just paint in a little bit more detail. Like that. And then I've got a bit of Payne's Grey and Burnt Sienna in my palette. And if I mix those two together, we'll get a good shadow mixture. And if I just use a larger brush to dilute it down, what we're going to do, and this feels a bit scary, but we're going to add a little bit on the clouds of elderflowers. Just, as you can see, very dilute. But it really helps sort of, bring them together a little bit, and also just give your piece that bit more of a rounded feel. And I'm just add a few extra little dots, because what's really clever about this shadow mix is it can look like extra flowers. So not too much, we don't want to disturb things going on there. And then I'm also going to just add some little bit of sap green into my shadow mix, and now I'm going to, some loud cars outside. I'm going to add a sweep of it onto my leaves, and then we're going to let that dry and paint in with the rigger brush some lovely leaf veins with some more concentrated shadow mix. So it's interesting because now, you know, I'm a purveyor of deep sap green and lovely colours like that I probably nowadays would add in a little bit of that, but I'm being true to my tutorial from a few years back, and that's the wonderful thing. That's why we keep painting in watercolour, is because we are constantly learning and evolving and trying new things. So here's the rigger brush, and in the book it says use some Payne's Grey to create the leaf lines, so that is what I will do. So a rigger brush is the most wonderful addition to your kit if you don't already have one. I can't get long, languid, fine lines like this in any other way. So do look at your leaves and actually see how the lines fall. I'm never one for sort of putting too many leaf lines in, but they can really transform a piece. So if you like the sound of A Year of Watercolour and you don't already have it as part of your collection, then you can get signed copies from my Etsy store and my De Winton Paper Co web shop. That's the only place to get a signed copy from me. And I just think, as we're heading into summer and maybe you're going on summer holidays, summer vacation, this might be the most lovely thing to bring along and paint your way through the rest of the year, and of course into the following year when you're going to see all sorts of lovely projects pop up, like birds' nests and new buds and all sorts of wildflowers. So that is our elderflower painted from A Year of Watercolour, but it's always nice to freshen it up and see it in real life on a video. And here we've got elderflower cordial recipe and other things that you can paint from late spring. We've got some violets, we've got lovely little wildflowers, we've got strawberries, we've got woodpeckers, we've got birds. There is so much going on in this lovely book, and it's perfect for painters of all abilities. We've got some really nice sort of simple flowers, as well as a few more advanced things. So the great thing is you can develop your painting skills as you go along. So you can find all the details of getting your hands on that in the episode notes below. But for now, I will say thank you very, very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that. I hope it's encouraged you to open up your A Year of Watercolour if you already have a copy. Don't forget to share your work on social media and tag us at the Winton Paper Co. And I'll see you again next time. Bye!